When I was young, I believe about 8 years old, my family was attending my little brother's soccer game. Me being a bored ADHD youth, I ran off to play in a nearby park, within view of where the parents were standing. The view of some of the park was slightly obscured by a few trees, which is an important tidbit for later. I wasn't the only kid at the park, and with some organization from one big kid, we all became involved in an exciting game of tag. As the game dissipated, the big kid approached me. If my memory is correct, he was around 14 years old. He introduced a game of hide-and-seek with me, and after it, asked me if I wanted to see his secret hiding spot. Now, I had been very educated by my parents on how to avoid sketchy situations and avoid abductions, and this otherwise would have set off red flags for me, except for the fact that he was a teenager. So in my little head, he was just another kid. He praised it as a secret spot where we could spy on people but nobody could see us, and claimed he had stashed candy there that he wanted to share with me. Once we pressed further into the woods, I was grabbed from behind a tree by an older man whose face was obscured from me. Within a moment of him beginning to drag me, I was pushed to the ground when the sounds of loud yelling began to draw closer to us. The cops arrived within a minute of my parents alerting me missing and ended up capturing the 14-year-old boy, who was covered in needle marks, and finding a nearby shaded van filled with illicit drugs. I believe they found that man shortly after. From earlier, when I had started playing hide-and-go-seek on the outskirts of the trees surrounding the park, my parents had noticed ahead of time that I wasn't visible from the park anymore. After a few minutes of calling my name, they decided to call the police, who arrived just in time. And I hate to imagine what could have happened if my mom hadn't been so attentive. This happened 2 to 3 years ago, but I still think about it every now and then when I'm walking alone and no one's around. I was volunteering at a school in a rural area, about 3 kilometers from my home. I didn't know how to drive, and I have an irrational fear of biking. That's another story. So I didn't mind walking home every Wednesday. I was 19 at the time, but just know that I looked at least 3 years younger. Short girl, round face, big eyes, no makeup. It was winter. It was cold. It was raining, and I had no umbrella. It's fine, though. I like the rain, and I was covered from head to toe. So I still enjoyed my peaceful walk with music blasting through my earphones. But as I was walking, I saw something in my peripheral vision that I was always scared to see in a situation like this. A car slowing down, following me. I didn't know what to do. I tried not to assume the worst, and I turned to see whether that was the only car on that road, or if there were potential witnesses in case something happened. Nope. Just this one car following me. No one else around as far as my eyes could see. Then the driver lowers his window, and I see his face. Old man, seems to take care of himself, unfortunately not weak-looking, eyes fixed on me. "Where are you going? Would you like me to take you somewhere?" I take off one earphone. "Huh?" I had heard him, because at that point, I had already turned down the music to be more aware of my surroundings. Plus, despite not wanting to assume the worst, I still wanted to buy some time to think of it out. Where can I run? Can someone hear me if I scream? Can anyone else see us? Where can I get help? Well, there was no one, and nowhere to run or really hide. I was walking in this very rural area on the side of this road that had a field on one side and woods on the other. There was just one abandoned house up ahead, so I tried to reason with myself. This man is probably just concerned that I am visibly walking a long distance, right? "Oh, no thanks, I'm fine. I like walking." "Oh, no, I don't care about that. I just want you to get in the car." "What? Maybe he's concerned because it's raining and I don't have an umbrella?" No thanks. I know it's raining, but I like the rain, so I'm okay." "No, I don't care. I just want you to get in the car. I'll drive you where you need to go." For frig's sakes, really? I'm giving this potential kidnapper 2 excuses and he doesn't take them. His intentions are becoming clearer and clearer. I can't ignore this anymore, and he never breaks eye contact, like he's analyzing my every move and reaction. I'm starting to notice that his smile is starting to become more sinister too. Is it just my fear tricking me? This whole time, I'm trying to look as friendly and naive as possible, because I don't want him to realize that he can't trick me into getting into his car, and his only choice would be to use force. Remember, no one can hear me if I scream. Listen, I just want to talk to you, can't I? Well, okay, what is it? No. I mean, I want to talk to you properly. You get in the car. I just want to talk to you. That's the only moment when he breaks eye contact, and it's to slowly look at me from head to toe. Well, you know what? How about I park a little bit further and you could just join me to have a chat? Sure. I don't know if you'll find a place to park anywhere close, but go ahead if you want, sir. I'm only walking straight anyway. Perfect. See you there? Yes, sir. He smiles and drives away. I wait for his car to be far enough so he can't see me, and I immediately run towards the abandoned house to hide while I make a call to my mom for her to come get me. The police wouldn't do anything since I'm not in immediate danger. We've tried to call them once after some serious threats from a stalker, and they just told us only to call them if the stalker was on our property. That's another good story. I explain everything to my mom, and she tells me to send her a screenshot of Google Maps with my exact location, just in case something happened, and to stay hidden while keeping an eye on the road to see if that man's car appears again. I'm about to end the call when I see his car drive by again, and what do I see? He's looking right at me, as if he already knew exactly where I was hiding, waving at me with a smile on his face, still with this trying very hard to seem friendly vibe. He knows I'm hiding and on a call with someone now. He knows I wasn't as naive as I pretended to be. Then he just drives away. My mom is still on the phone with me, so I tell her what just happened, and she tells me to stay calm and wait for her. We end the call. I wait. He doesn't come back again. My mom's car appears, much faster than I anticipated. I get in and we go home. I still can't wrap my head around what exactly happened and what could have happened. So to begin, this event took place in summer 2019 in England, more specifically the Midlands. At the time of this story, I was 15, male, and was with 3 other friends, all 15 and male also. Me and 3 friends, who I will call James, Brad, and Ryan for the purpose of this story, were bored with nothing to do. Most of our friends had long gone inside, and the time was probably around 6 to 7 p.m. We were near a small stretch of woods that was near a road, and had a nice path to walk along with a stream. After walking and conversing for maybe 10 minutes, we stopped at a bench to rest and just play some music and enjoy the last of the heat as the night began to draw in. Not like dark, but just around the time before sunset when the sky gets the nice orange hue. After sitting and chatting for maybe 15 minutes with no sign of anyone else on the short trail, an old couple come walking past us. The woman had a long skirt on, down to her shoes, and one of those old woman's hats from like the 40s. I can't remember anything distinctive about her face, except that she seemed maybe around 60 to 70 at most years old, and very gray and dull in looks. The man seemed slightly older than the woman, a cream shirt on, old jeans and work boots, and a cane in one hand. They had their arms interlocked, and seemed at most ordinary apart from the clothing, and such which seemed quite dated. We were sat on a small bench that could fit 3 people maximum on it. Therefore, me, Ryan, and Brad sat on the bench, with James on the opposite side of the path, sat on the floor facing us. Now, just to point out which becomes somewhat important soon, Brad is of Indian descent, and the rest of us were white British. As the couple were to pass through us, James had to bring his legs in to let them pass. However, the man seemed somewhat mad about this, and almost scoffed as he walked by James. Understandably, James was confused and a little offended by this, and in a half-assertive, half-joking way said, "All right, mate, no need for that." The couple seemed to ignore it and carried on down the hill. Now this is where things get creepy. We brushed this off. As an old man grumpy at the world trying to seem like hero to his wife and expected them to just move along, but this did not happen. As they reached the bottom of the hill, his head did almost a full 90-degree quick snap to face us, and with the most menacing look in his face, charged up the hill now. The strangest part is in a full 60 seconds had at least passed, and now he was pissed? It made no sense, like all of a sudden my friend's slight remark had clicked in his brain. He also dropped his cane, much to his wife's despair, and walked almost double his previous speed uphill. We were truly baffled, and maybe expected a stern talking to, and to an extent, that's what we got from him, at least the usual old man stuff. You kids have no respect, and you should watch out. You don't know us. I have grandkids your age, etc. And as quickly as he said all this, he walked back down the hill, retrieved the cane, and began staring at us from the bottom of the hill alongside his wife. Then this is where things took a drastic turn. The man stood there, almost huffing and puffing like an angry toddler, when his wife saw this as her turn to make the approach. As he stood, for the whole time after this, by the way, staring at us, not blinking, barely moving, just staring, his wife made her way back up the incline and began speaking to us. She seemed even more delusional and even more incoherent in the way she acted and spoke. Most of the stuff was the same as her husband, until she took a huge interest in Brad. Remember how I said he was of Indian descent? She looked him dead in the eyes and said, "You're different to all of these, aren't you?" With an almost evil half a grin, Brad was taken aback and said, "Sorry, is that racist?" She shot back almost instantly with, "Oh, no, I just mean you're different. You are the chosen one." I know, weird, and almost cliche sounding, right? At this, we were all shocked and began shooting each other concerned and confused half glances. And then she began waving into the trees behind the bench where us three were sitting, her eyes frantically darting from point to point and waving almost methodically in motion as she exclaimed loudly and almost proudly, "It's okay. You don't need to watch them anymore. It's fine. You don't need to come out now. You can stay there." At this, we all turned around rapidly to see no one or nothing behind us. And at that, she shot Brad one more deep stare and started on her walk again. The old man had been staring the whole time they met at the bottom of the hill, interlocked arms and turned the corner. We were all feeling all types of emotions now and really didn't know what to do. The woods on either sides of the path was thick. So thick, in fact, even teens couldn't enter it, let alone OAPs. So there was only one place they could have gone, which was followed the path on. Ryan had the smart idea to see where they went, so no less than 20 seconds after they rounded the corner, we followed at an almost running walk speed and got to the end of the trail, but no sign of them. At the end of the trail led to 3 directions, into an alley and a shop with a dead end, right, onto the start of a busy road with nothing to see, and straight into a cul-de-sac that also had a dead end right at the bottom. Me and Brad went straight, Ryan went left, and James went right. But you guessed it, they were gone. How? We met up in disbelief and shocking confusion and everything in between. The sun was now pulling in, and we needed to make our way home, and therefore that's what we did. And on the way home was at least a 20 to 30 minute walk, half paranoid we would see them again, but not really flustered. It's now been like half a year, and we'd all forgotten about these people and never seen them again. But after reading some of the stories and here in similar places and hearing them on YouTube, it reminded me of that evening, and I thought you guys would like to hear it. I grew up in Ohio in the 70s, and me and my childhood friend Joe were outside all the time. We could manage it. Joe lived on a farm that bordered a pretty big forest, and my parents would drop me off in the morning, and we'd stay in the woods all weekend. We'd only come out for school. We loved pretending we were frontiersmen. We'd build shelters, traps, practiced making fire with sticks, the whole 9 yards. When we got to be in high school, we got this notion to pull a Stand By Me. This was based on the movie of the same name that had just come out. The idea was that we'd walk the railroad tracks out in the country, but instead of looking for a dead body, we'd find cool bridges to fish from and camp a little ways off the tracks. Of course, we knew this was dangerous and we'd likely be trespassing, but we were kids. We had a lot of fun. We did find beautiful rivers. We discovered bridges no one went to. We fished. We hid from trains. At night, we camped in the woods just near the tracks and made small hidden fires. Nothing bad ever happened. It was idyllic. In fact, it was so much fun. We did it multiple times. Never had a problem. After high school, me and Joe went our own ways. We both left home, but almost stayed in touch and always tried to coordinate visits so we'd see each other occasionally. Well, one summer in the mid-90s, it worked out that we were both in town for a week. We'd do stuff with family in the day, and at night we'd catch drinks at the bar or just sit outside Joe's house around a fire and talk about the old days. One night, me and Joe got talking about our Stand By Me trips. Well, nostalgia and beer are a hell of a mix. Soon we decided to take a day, walk the rails, camp one night, and walk home. The day came. We started out early morning. We had my wife drop us off at our old spot where we used to start, right outside our hometown. She thought this was absolutely crazy and made sure to mention it. When she pulled away, Joe suggested that instead of walking the usual route, we'd take the opposite direction, just to be adventurous. We knew the land well, we had a map, so I gave a what the hell and off we set. The day went fine. It was fun and a little sad, but in a good way. We found a bridge and sat on the edge, smoked a joint and moved on. We had no fishing gear, but we brought some canned food and other stuff. Before night started to set in, we picked a spot to camp. It was a thick forested area, trees on every side of the train tracks, so you felt like you were in a tunnel. We had brought small hammocks to sleep on, but before we set them up, we decided to do a little scouting of the perimeter. Now, this is what we used to do in the old days, too. We'd walk the area around a little bit to make sure some dude's house wasn't just over a hill and we were actually camping in their yard. We walked maybe 100 or so feet into the woods and up a small incline. We figured if we didn't see anything from on top of this short hill, we'd be fine. But when we got to the top, we saw an old building down at the bottom, about 100 yards into the woods. It was barely visible. We pondered over what to do. We both assumed it was a sugar shack or something because there didn't appear to be a clear road into it. From where we were, there didn't look to be anyone in it either. It was quiet. No movement could be seen. No lights. We decided to walk a little closer just to make sure. We came down the hill very slowly, and as we neared the building, we saw it wasn't a sugar shack at all. It was an old church. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. It was a squat, sagging building whose wooden planks were almost black from years of moss and rot. A cross still stood atop of the place, also weathered black. None of the windows had glass, and there were no doors, just open doorways. We got close enough to see inside. There were rows of pews, and a built-up section in front for a preacher to stand. We didn't go all the way in. We didn't want to. Beyond all that, there was no sign of anyone else. No footprints, no paths, no roads. It was an abandoned church. We left immediately and went back up the hill to our spot we had picked to camp. Having a hill between us and the church made us feel better, but we were still a little uneasy. We chalked it up to the natural creepiness seeing a church in the middle of the woods would elicit. Besides, at this point it was dusk, and we just decided to rig up our hammocks and go to sleep and move on at early morning. Night set in, and as we lay in our hammocks and shot the shit, we began to hear something in the direction of the church. Our conversation about it went a little like this. Do you hear that? What the hell is that? It sounds like people singing. And it did sound just like singing. We both slid right out of our hammocks and hunkered down, straining to hear more. We listened for a minute or two, and the singing continued, but it wasn't getting louder. Finally, we decided to creep back up the hill and see if we could spy where the sound was coming from. We could still move very quietly in the woods from the old days. It was second nature to us. The moon was barely out, but it provided enough light so you wouldn't walk right into a tree, but it was near pitch black. We didn't use flashlights as we crept slowly up the hill, and we didn't talk. When we got to the top, we saw a light in the distance. It was coming from the church, and the singing was coming from inside. Joe and I put our heads close together and had a hushed conversation that boiled down to, "Can you believe this crap?" The light looked to be candlelight from the way it flickered, and though we tried, we couldn't make out what was being sung. It sounded like church music, but in another language. We sat and watched for a while, trying to see who was in there, but we only saw occasional shadows. We had no intention of getting closer either. We had about a football field length between us, and we aimed to keep it that way. The singing continued for a bit, and then it stopped. After that, a booming male voice began to chant. I was already freaked out, but this voice thoroughly scared the crap out of me. It sounded like some Old Testament preacher you see in movies. But again, it was like he was speaking in a different language, because we couldn't understand a single word. Eventually, it got to where the single male voice would say something, and then a bunch of voices would answer in song. This lasted for a while, and when they all broke into this song, sustained wail that just kept getting louder. It got so loud and so disturbing that I covered my ears. Then it stopped. At this point, I was getting ready to say, "Let's get the hell out of here," when Joe put a hand on my shoulder and hissed, "They're coming out." We were far enough away that we couldn't make them out really well, but what we could see was a line of figures walk out the doorway, all holding hands in a single file. We could see some of them had flashlights. They began to sing again, and the light from the flashlights began to move towards us and the hill. We booked it back down to our campsite, grabbed our stuff, and ran to the tracks. Once there, we ran down the tracks in the direction we had come from. After a few moments, we stopped and looked back. We saw lights coming down the hill. They were moving erratically, like whoever was holding them was shaking them. We continued to run in spurts and walk as fast as we could. We eventually stopped seeing the lights and came to a road. By our map, we knew a small town was about 15 minutes down it, and we walked there, got to a 24-hour gas station, and called my wife to come and get us. My wife and other friends all just thought it was kids messing around, but I heard those voices, and they sure as hell didn't sound like kids to me. Not sure who those people were, but it was definitely the creepiest thing that happened to me out in the woods.